Collections. What is a collection? Let me tell you. Before I talk about what is a collection, we need to understand about what is an array. Why is an array used? Tell me. Collection of similar types. But there is a disadvantage with array. Suppose if I declare an array of size 100 like this. See here I am declaring int I. This will declare an array, right? Is this an array? Tell me. Is this an array? I is an array. True or false? False. I is a reference variable which can point to an array, integer array object. I is not an array. It is a reference variable which can store the address of an integer array object. Now if you want an integer array, you have to do it like this. New int of 100. This will create an integer array object and you have to point it by using I is equals to. So these are the two steps for declaring an array. Okay? First you have to create a reference and then this will create an object of array of size 100. Okay? But there is a disadvantage with array or the limitation of an array, not disadvantage, a limitation of an array. The limitation is once you declare size as 100, can you insert one or one element? No, you cannot insert. It will cause array index out of bounds, etc. Okay. So the limitation of an array is the size of an array cannot grow. But suppose if I declare an array of size 100 and if I store only 10 elements inside it, don't you think 90 spaces are wasted? But if I create an array of size 100 and if I want to add more than 100 elements to an array, again it is not possible, right? So will it not be good if I can add elements into an array dynamically? Like I don't want to declare an array. I want an object similar to array which can store objects inside it, but it can grow dynamically and decrease its size dynamically. Tell me, array is also an object or not? In Java, array is an object in Java, but in C it is not an object. In Java, everything is an object. Array is also an object. Array is which type of an object? Array is an object which can store references of some other objects. Suppose integer array can store reference of integers. String array can store references of string objects. Right? Array is an object which can store references of other objects. But the limitation of an array is it cannot grow its size or it cannot decrease its size once it is declared. Right? We have to decide the size of an array during declaration only. Now I felt that it will be good if there is an object in which I can store reference of some other object, just like an array. Array is also storing reference of some other object. Just like in our array, if I have some other object which can store references of other objects, but its size can increase dynamically and decrease dynamically, it will be very good at runtime. So such objects which can store references of other objects and they can increase their size dynamically and decrease their size dynamically are called as collections. Okay. So which is the latest version of JDK right now? 1.7 also is there. Yeah. But before JDK 1.3, there is no concept of collections. When they are introducing JDK 1.3, they wanted to introduce collections. As I told, what is a collection? Collection is a class or collection is an object which can store references of other objects and its size can increase dynamically and decrease dynamically, right? So they wanted to create or introduce collections. So they introduced some collection classes like array list, linked list, hash set, tree set, etc. So let us try to understand how to use these collections, how to declare these collections, how to use them. Okay. First, let us start using a class called array list first. First, I'll give a demo of how to use it, how to add an element, how to declare it, how to add an element, how to remove it, how to use an object. Then I'll go to the internals of how it is designed actually. Okay. So now I want to store the names of all the participants here, and I don't want to declare the size of an array. I can use an array. Now I know that number of participants here are 24. I could have declared an array of size 24. I can add all the names inside this array. But what I want is, if somebody comes newly tomorrow, I cannot increase the size of the array dynamically. So I want to use a collection for storing all your names. Okay. So one of the collection I am naming is array list. Let us try to use this. Okay. First I'll create a project called collections. You can also do parallel with me. Do it parallel right now. New project collections. I am going to create a new class, list demo, and give the package here as com.accenture. Class name is list demo, take main method. So there is a class called ArrayList. New ArrayList. ArrayList names list is equals to, see, whenever you type control space, you will be getting something called as E here. As of now, you delete the T. I'll talk about that concept called generics after completing collections. Okay. Once you get this E, when you use control space, delete it. Don't write this import statement, let it be automatically generated. Okay. Now I want to add a name. Names list dot add. I am adding. Tell me one name. What is your name? Piyush. So I will add another name. Mouse. What is that? His nickname is
White Rat.
White Rat.
Yeah.
What is that White Rat?
White Rat.
White Rat. Okay, any other black rats? Any other name? Batman. Who is Batman then? Okay. Okay, I added this list. This is a way to add a string to the list. See here, just type names list dot add. See, add method. What is the argument for this add method? What is the type of this argument? Object. I pass string because string is subclass of object. As this method, add method is taking object, the superclass. I can pass any object. I can pass employee object also if I have, right? So to a list, I will be able to add any object, but right now I added only strings. So if you want to add, this is the way. Okay. Now, if you try to add the same things in a list, I'll just try to compare it and tell the limitations of a string array. I will create a string array. Names is equals to new string array of, suppose here I am adding 3. I create a string array of 3 names. So now I'll say names of 0 is equals to Piyush. Tell me some other names now. Huh? Tirukunde. What is that again? Okay, any other? Okay, any other name? Nikesh. Nikesh. Okay. So I added names of 0, names of 1, names of 2. Now will I be able to add a fourth name? And names of 3 is equals to tell me another name. DA. Okay, damn. Okay. So will it give a problem or not? I declared an array of size 3, but how many elements I am adding into it? 4. So if I run this, it will throw what exception? Array index out of bounds exception. The size is 3. It will not allow. So whenever I am declaring array size is limited. We cannot increase the size of an array dynamically. But now I declared an array list. How many objects can I add into this array list? N number of objects. I can go on adding. Array list can increase its size dynamically and decrease its size dynamically also. Okay. Now what I'll do is I'll just print this array list. System.out.println names list. Okay. Array list is a collection, a class which can store references of other objects, just like an array. Okay, now here I'll run it. Yeah, it is printing Piyush White Red Batman. So how is it printing? Tell me. I gave a reference of array list to system.out.println. How did this get printed? Actually, this is a reference variable, right? Reference variable will be having address of that object. Once I gave this object as an argument to out.println, how did this get printed? I am expecting an address to be printed. How did this get printed? Tell me. With your earlier knowledge, I told you. Very good. Whenever I pass a reference to out.println method, internally toString will be called. In array list, toString is overridden so that it will print all the elements of the array list like this. Okay. So I printed array list. Now I don't want to print array list. I want to iterate over each element. I want to go through each element and then print it. I'll show you various ways. See here, I am writing a for loop for int I is equals to 0, I less than names list dot size. Names list dot size will give the size of this array list. Now in this case is 3 dot size I plus plus. Then I will print system.out.println, or I will say names list dot get. See, there is a method called get. If I pass the index, it will give the value at that index. If I pass 0, it will give Piyush. If I pass 1, it will give White Rat. Right? So get, and I'll pass the index I. What is the return type of this get? Objects, right? But I know that it is string object. I will typecast it to string. string name is equals to I need to typecast to string. Then system.out.println name. This is the one way of iterating through a list. Very simple way of iterating through a list. Iterating means running over each element and printing it and using it. So if I run this, it will print all the names. See? So this is the simplest way to iterate over a list. How do you iterate over a string? Let's see here. For int I is equals to 0, I less than int I'll use j because I have already used I. Int j is equals to 0, j less than names dot size or length. Names is an array, so length j plus plus. Then if I want to access it, system.out.println names of j. This is a way to iterate over an array, and this is a way to iterate over a list or a collection simply. There is another way of iterating through the collection. I will comment this right now. See, for string name colon names list, for object name comma names list object. Okay, tell me. If you see names list dot add method is taking objects, and what is the get method take? Get method returning object. So in array list, right now I add only string objects. I could add any object, and when iterating over it, whenever I call get, I will be getting an object, right? So now see here another way of iterating. Names list is having what? Objects. Okay, in this case I have had string objects, but names list can have any object, right? I could add any object. So now when this way, when you are iterating for the first time in the loop, O will be pointing to first element of this list. Second time in the loop, O will be pointing to second element. Like that it will iterate until the size of this list. This is another way of iterating. Okay. So now what I will do is, here I'll just do like this. String name is equals to, and I'm typecasting O to name, and then I'll print. Okay, just try to understand what this for loop is saying. I am iterating. This is a way to iterate over a collection right now. For the first time in the loop, O will be pointing to first element of this names list. What is the first element there? Piyush. Piyush is a string. But we can add not only a string, we can add any object, right? So you should assume that it is returning an object. So you are using superclass reference O to point to first element. And you are here, as you know, it is a string object, you are typecasting it to string and printing. So when you are iterating, O will be pointing to first element for the first time. Second time in the loop, second element. Third time in the loop, third element. Until when? Until the size of this list. This is another way of iterating over a collection. I am going to comment it. Now see the third way of iterating. Names list dot. There is a method called iterator inside array list. Names list dot iterator. What is it returning? See the return type of this iterator. It is returning an object of iterator. Okay, iterator is again I'm importing. Then see the way now, next way, while iterator dot has next and iterator dot next, it will return an object type. I know that it is a string, so string name is equals to object typecasting. Oh, sorry, string. Sorry, this is string. Then I'll print system.out.println name. See here, when I am using array list, you need to understand that internally array list is also using arrays. So internally, whenever you are adding some element to the array list, it is internally using arrays. Okay, I'll give a very clear picture after some time, but here right now understand on the top first for now. See, this is an array list object. Okay, internally it will be having a variable and the variable name is elements. Array list object will be having a variable called elements and it is of type object array. Elements will be pointing to an object array. Whenever I create an object of array list, internally array list will be having an instance variable called elements. What is its type? Object array. So internally array list is also using arrays. Okay. Now I added 3 names, right? 3 elements inside this array. So internally inside this array, whenever I add an element to array list, it will be adding to this array only. So I added Piyush and White Rat to this array list. So Piyush is a string object. These are all 3 string objects, right? I added these string objects to an array list, so they will be added to this array. So just try to understand here the logic. Whenever I call add on the array list, internally array list is having a variable called elements of type object array. This is object array. Wait, this is an object array. It will be having some elements, right? So whenever you added first element, it will be adding this to the array. Second element, this array. Third element. Now elements of 0 will be what? Elements of 0 in this case, in our example, will be Piyush. Elements of 1 will be White Rat. Elements of 2 will be Batman. Right? So internally array list is also using arrays. First you have to understand. But how array list is growing dynamically and decreasing its size dynamically, I will explain the logic behind it. But now to understand iterator. See, whenever I call names list.iterator, I will get an object of iterator. This is an object of iterator. This is an object of iterator. This iterator will be initially pointing to the -1th element of this array. Whenever I say list.iterator, I will be getting an iterator object. this will be pointing to minus 1th element of the array. Actually, minus 1th element is not there. That means that it is not pointing to before 0th element, right? So here, whenever I call iterator dot has next, this is a method in iterator. What it will do is it will check whether there is next element in the array. See, next element, previously it is pointing to minus 1. It will check whether there is an element at 0th location of this array. It is there S, right? So has next will check whether there is next element or not. It will return true or false accordingly. Now in my array list there are 3 elements, P, U, write and some other thing, right? So for the first time if I call has next, the iterator will check is there next element. It is pointing to minus 1, it will check whether 0th element is there or not. It is there. So has next will return true. Then what am I calling? Inside the loop I am calling next. What this next will do is it will make the iterator point to next element. Iterator will point to first element now. Okay, iterator is incremented to point to next element, and next method will return the next element, whatever it is pointing to. It will return the first element right now, right? So what I am doing, iterator dot next will increment the iterator to point to next element. It is returning the element. So I am taking it and printing it. Again in the loop, again iterator dot has next is called. Now iterator is pointing to 0th element. Iterator is pointing to 0th element. It will check whether first element is there or not. If it is there, it will return true. And again, I am calling what? Iterator dot next. It will update the iterator to point to first element now. It will return the element. Like that, it will go till the end. So let's assume now the array size is 3. Fine, it will be here. Okay, after printing the 3 elements, it will be iterator will be pointing to third element. Now if I call iterator dot has next, it will check whether 4th element is there or not. Is it there? No, it will return false. So it will come out of the loop. Okay. So this is the way iterator is working. Okay, to explain how array list is working, I am creating a class called myArrayList. You just understand it, don't write it. myArrayList I'll write. So myArrayList, as I said, ArrayList will be having object array, elements. So this is a instance variable, private. How to initialize instance variables? Constructor. In the constructor, default constructor of myArrayList, what I am doing is elements is equals to new object array of size 10. Or what I will do is I will say I will have a variable private int capacity, and here I will initialize capacity is equals to 10, new object array of size capacity. So here, whenever this is a pseudo code for ArrayList, ArrayList code looks similar to this. Whenever you create an object of ArrayList by using new, internally it is creating an object array of size 10. Capacity, initial capacity of an ArrayList is by default 10. So that's the picture. ArrayList is having a variable called elements of type object array. Its size will be initially 10. Okay. And now see the logic for add method. Public void add. Add method is taking object as parameter. So what it is doing is, if I am writing if condition, I will have another variable here, private int size is equals to 0. Size means the current size of the element. Initially, array list will be empty. What I will do is, if size less than capacity, size plus plus I will use, means it will increment afterwards. Let's assume that I am adding first, I am calling add for the first time. Size will be 0. 0 less than 10. Satisfied, it will go inside. And then, okay, I will not use, I will increment here. Elements of size plus plus is equals to. So what will happen? For the first time, if I call add method and pass piyush, I pass, right? So what is doing? Elements of size is 0, right? Elements of 0 is equals to whatever object I passed. So elements of 0 will be. Second time, if I call add method, what is the size now? Here I incremented size, right? Size is 1. So second time, if I call add method, 1 less than 10. Okay, elements of 1 is equals to second. Like that, I can add up to 10. Now, once the size becomes 10, this condition will it be satisfied? 10 less than 10? No. It will come to else part. Else. See the logic here, it's very interesting. Here I will create string array, object array temporary variable is equals to new object array, and here before this I will say capacity is equals to 2 into capacity. And I will create an object array of size. Then here there will be some logic which will copy all the elements of whatever is present inside elements array to temp array. So see the logic here. Once I try to add 11th element, capacity is equals to 2 into capacity, means capacity will become 20. So here what am I doing? Is this a local variable temp? So temp will be pointing to an object array of size 20 now. 20. This is temp. Temp is pointing to an array object array of size 20 now. So after this there will be some logic which will copy all the elements of this elements. Element is pointing to this array, right? Which will copy all the elements of this array to this array, right? And then I will say like this. Elements is equals to temp. Elements is equals to temp means previously elements was having address of this object. Now elements will be pointing to this one, right? Previously the capacity was 10. Now elements is pointing to an array of size 20, right? Then if I do like this, elements of 11, I add 11th element, elements of 11 is equals to whatever I add. So do you feel that array is growing? Array is growing its size. Initially the capacity of array is 10, but when I try to add 11th element, the size has grown to 20. If I try to add 21st element, the size will grow to 40. If I try to add 41st element, the size will grow to 80. Like that, the size is growing. But actually, tell me, is array is growing dynamically? It is growing. This logic makes us feel as if it is growing dynamically. This object is not growing. Once the array size is declared, this object is not growing. What we are doing? We are creating another object and making elements to point to this. So the logic makes us feel that the array is growing dynamically, but nothing can grow dynamically. The logic is missing.
What happens to that?
This is not having any references. Now previous elements are pointing to it. Now this object has no references. It will be eligible for garbage collection. Garbage collector will free the memory allocated. Right? So this logic makes us feel as if we are adding it dynamically. Once you understood that internally array list is internally using arrays, let us try to understand how this iterator is working. Okay? See, in array list there is a method called iterator, which I called. What is the return type of this iterator? Iterator. The method name is iterator. It is returning an object of type iterator. Okay. See, in java.util package, there is an interface called iterator. This iterator is having three methods: as next, next, remove. Okay. Now, see here, I am going to create a class inside my array list. Can I create a class inside a class? Just I minimize this code. See here, I can create a class, my iterator, I'll say. This is a class declaration inside class. Class inside class is called as an inner class. Okay, we'll understand the concept of inner class and why we need to use inner class and when we need to use inner class. First, before going ahead, I'll tell you, if you write a class inside a class, this inner class will be able to access all the variables and methods of the outer class. Even though they are private, even private numbers also can be accessed by the inner class. Right? So now see the logic. I will make my class my iterator to implement iterator. Okay. When a class is implementing an interface, we have to provide bodies for all the methods. So here is the body. I'll click on this add unimplemented methods. It will add all the bodies. As I used previously in my code, did I use a method called has next? Next. What I told has next will check whether there is next element or not. Right? So tell me. Okay, before going ahead, this my iterator is a class, is it? Inner class of array list. Here I am just writing a pseudo code to make you understand only. This is how array list class looks like. This is an inner class. Now inside array list class there is a method public. Return type is iterator, and the method name is iterator. See, this is an interface. If a method is returning interface type, can I return its implementation? Yes. See here, I'll just return my iterator. So if the method return type is iterator, I can return any implementation of it. Okay. So here I am returning my iterator because my iterator is implementing iterator. Why is it giving error? Oh, sorry. New. So this iterator method is this the method which I called? Names list means array list dot iterator I called. It is returning an object of a class which is implementing iterator. Here in the pseudo code I wrote it as my iterator. Okay? Just to explain the logic. Now, for the first time I said iterator will be pointing to -1th element. In the diagram I showed you, for the first time whenever I get an iterator will be pointing to -1th location. -1th location of this array, right? See here, in my iterator class I will write a variable private int current position. And I will give a constructor, default constructor for my iterator, where I will initialize current position is equals to -1. Okay. So instead, my iterator is having an instance variable called current position, which is whose initial value will be -1. So I said whenever I call iterator method on the list, I am getting an object of iterator. Iterator is having a variable whose initial value is -1. Now what this has next will do is it will check whether the next element is there or not, right? Actually whenever I add an element to array list, the element is added to this list, this array, right? Elements is a variable which is pointing to this array. So now I need to check in this has next method, I need to check elements of current position +1. What I said has next will check whether next element is there or not. Initially it is pointing to -1 location. It will check current position +1 is -1 +1 0 is equals to null, is not equals to. If it is not equals to null means there is an element, is it? So for the first time if I am calling has next, let's assume I got an iterator object. First time I am calling has next. Current position will be -1. So elements of 0, -1 +1 will become 0. Elements of 0, if it is not null, means elements of 0 means what? This one. If it is not null, that means that there is an element at that location. So if this condition is satisfied, it will return true, right? See, elements, is it a variable of my iterator? Elements, is it a variable of my iterator? No, it is an element of outer class, my array list. That is the reason I said inner class can access even the private variables of outer class. That is the reason why this class is made as a inner class. If this class is written in a separate file, then will it be able to access elements, private variable? No. So that is the advantage of making a class as inner class. Okay. So what should the next do? Next should return the element at that location, next location. So return elements of ++ current position. As I said, whenever I called next, here I said whenever I call next, iterator will point to next location, means current position is incremented, then it is returning the element at that location. See, return elements of ++ will first, it will be incremented, then the element will be returned. So this is how iterator is working. Whenever I call a dot iterator, list dot iterator, am I getting a new iterator or not? Because see the code here. Whenever I call iterator method, it is returning new my iterator. Whenever constructor is executed, what will be the current position? -1. So whenever we get an iterator, it will be always pointing to -1 location. As next will check whether next element is there or not. Next will check, next will return the next element by incrementing the current position. Right? Why is this made as an inner class with me? Why can't I write the same class outside in a separate file? If I write this class in a separate another class, not as an inner class, I will not be able to access elements, the private variable of the array list. So if you want some other class to access private variables of your class also, then make it as an inner class. What you have to do is, you have to read a file by using buffer reader line by line, add each word inside a list, finally print that list. See this code here. What I told is I want you to read line by line. So here I am reading line by line. I will create an array list. Array list. List is equals to new array list. Then I asked you to say system.out.println. I don't want to write to buffer writer, so I'll comment these lines. See here, I'll say line dot split. Split method you have to specify what is a delimiter, by using which you have to split the line. So it will split and give you the words array, string. Words array is equals to. Then I want to iterate over these words for string word colon words. I wanted to add to list dot add word. So this will add each word to that list. Finally, after this loop, after this program is over, I want to iterate through this list by using an iterator. So what I will do is list dot iterator, I called iterator is equals to then while iterator dot has next iterator dot next. I know that it is returning a string, so I'll take it in a string. String word is equals to then I'll print it system dot out dot print, I'll say, not ln, print words plus I'll just print some space for each word. So where is it reading from? xyz.text actually. I want to read from xyz.text in F. So now I'll run it. xyz.txt in F drive. Oh, it's not having anything. Okay, now I'll save it and run it again. Is it saved or not? Oh, again it's not saved. Why is it not saved? Okay, now I think there is some content here. If I run, it should print it. Alright, this file contents are not saved. Okay. Yes, if you run, you'll get the output like this, whatever is there in the file. Okay, the next assignment which I want to tell you is, I have a file called xyz.txt. In that I will be storing some employee details. First one is employee ID 1001, comma, after comma, delimiter as comma, I am giving name as Shiva, comma, salary some 10 lakhs. Second line also will be following the same pattern, separated by comma. Employee ID from 2002, comma, tell me another name. Okay, Varun. Okay, so salary is 30 lakhs. Like that, I will be having all the employees. Insert some employee details separated by comma. First one should be the employee ID, second is the employee name, employee class. Now what I want you to do is, I want you to create a class called employee with employee ID, name and salary. Okay? Then write a program which will read this file. For each line, I want you to create an employee object, right? Whatever is required for employee object are there or not? Employee ID, name and salary. Using this employee ID, name and salary, for each line create an employee object. Add that employee object to list. Okay? Then finally print only employee names by iterating over the list. This is the task.